What do we mean by further study? This thing has been studied for years. The whole history of the church is in front of us. Canon law is with us. There is no such thing as an ordained female diaconate, but that's what they're pushing. It's quite clearly a revolution attempting to be implemented.
The Synod on Synodality at the Vatican in Rome is about to wrap up, but we're going to get Father Gerald Murray on the team at 30 past the hour to give us his comments, wrapping up the Synod on Synodality. What were the highlights? What were the lowlights? Well, what could we expect next? That's with Father Gerald Murray, the canon lawyer, coming up at 30 past the hour.
By the way, my name is Joe McLean. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below.
We are talking today with Father Gerald Murray, canon lawyer. Even America Magazine is not happy with the Synod on Synodality, which just doesn't bode well. I mean, let that sink in for a second. So we've asked Father Gerald Murray to be on the team to give us some commentary on what he thinks. Father Murray, good morning. Thank you for your time again. Let me just start with this question. Do you think that the Synod on Synodality will finally come to an end? Will it actually end, or does the gravy train keep rolling somehow, some way? They just extend the synodal way?
Well, it's already been extended, Joe, because the expert committees that Pope Francis decided to establish back in February and March of this year, they will continue their work, and their reports to the Pope or to the Synod Committee are not due until June of 2025. So the final report is really not final in the sense of bringing to conclusion the matters being discussed at the Synod. So, yeah, this is going to go on, and then throw on top of that this notion that the church has to have a new paradigm where synodality, an unknown concept, is implemented in every aspect of church life. Well, that means this whole notion of synodality is going to be constantly being worked into things. Cardinal Fernandez wrote a letter the other day in which he said that the Pope is going to continue his second study commission on female deacons. And you may recall that Pope Francis convened a first committee to study female deacons. The results were never announced, but then there was dissatisfaction. So the Pope said, well, we'll have a second committee. So that second committee was formed. Again, we're not quite sure of what the results are. But apparently, that's work of that committee is going to continue. It's interesting because Cardinal Fernandez, in his report at the beginning of the Synod of the study committee, which was dealing with this topic, said that the time is not mature or ripe right now for saying that we can have a female diaconate. It requires further study. What do we mean by further study? This thing has been studied for years.
Right.
There was study by the International Theological Commission. It came to the conclusion there is no female diaconate in the early church. The whole history of the church is in front of us. Canon law is with us. There is no such thing as an ordained female diaconate, but that's what they're pushing. And of course, the reason they're pushing it is it's the way to get female priests, because there's only one sacrament of holy orders. If a woman can be ordained to the first degree of the sacrament of holy orders, then they'll say, well, they're already enjoying the sacrament of holy orders. Why are you preventing them from going to the second and third degrees of the sacrament? So it's quite clearly a revolution attempting to be implemented, and Pope Francis has not approved of it at this point, but he continues a process which might lead to a very pressure campaign to say, no, female diaconate is possible because the will of the Holy Spirit is manifested in the Synodal Assembly, and there's such agitation for it. We can't say that the simple fact that the early church didn't implement it didn't mean that the Holy Spirit doesn't want it now. I'm afraid that's the kind of argument we're going to get. It's the mystery of evil in the life of the world and in the church. He is, that bishop that you spoke about laid hands on females who he then sent out to work in remote communities where they would administer baptism. That is simulating a sacrament. Now, he said hands weren't being laid on the person in view of being ordained a deacon. Well, why then did you use the exact same action that is used when you ordain a deacon. In fact, ordinations involve the laying on of hands. If the bishop got up before the ceremony and said, this is not a diaconal ordination, nonetheless, I'm going to look like I'm doing a diaconal ordination, then we might say, okay, you've covered your bases. But to boast about this after the fact, this is how slow revolutions happen. You know, they start chipping away at the edges and they do things that are provocative. And when they're not stopped, then they go to the next level. So that's disgraceful. And bishops who don't uphold the faith violate the oath that they take when they're ordained bishops, which is precisely to uphold the faith. But this has become a huge problem during this pontificate. In previous pontificates, bishops who did things which contradicted the faith were punished, reprimanded, called to order. Now, bishops who say things like Cardinal Hollerich, who said that the Catholic Church is teaching homosexuality is wrong, he's given positions of influence in the Vatican. So we're in a very serious crisis in the life of the Church. We have to recognize that. The hierarchical Church is not a human invention. It came from Christ. And the authority to govern the Church is not seized by men. Rather, it's conferred by God through the sacrament of holy orders. As regards the authority of each bishop in his diocese, that comes from Christ. They were sent out, the apostles and then their successors, to govern the flock, feed my sheep. Now, episcopal conferences are administrative organizations designed to give greater unity to pastoral action, but they are not instances where the Holy Spirit is going to guarantee the orthodoxy of what comes out of them. So what's happening here in the Church, of course, is that we're only having this discussion because the supreme authority allows it. So it's a very strange situation where the supreme authority is using power to foment a discussion which is designed to disunify the doctrinal authority of the Church, whereas the Holy See is the supreme doctrinal authority designed to uphold it. So it's very, very contradictory. Now, what is the political background? We could say the German bishops are not happy, and other European hierarchies, Holland and Belgium, they promote a radical agenda, and they do not like the idea that they can't simply change teaching on their own. So they're pushing this theory that episcopal conferences have doctrinal authority to determine the meaning of church teaching. This is not how the Catholic Church is organized. This is the old problem now. Are we focusing on product or process? And synodality is a process, and processes go on and on and on. In fact, we're told that early on in the synod, the goal was not to come up with documents, but rather to come up with a new way of being the Church. So I don't expect that this final document is going to do very much, because what's going to happen, of course, is everything is provisional until we get these final reports from the expert committees, and then the Holy See says, well, yes, these experts say the following, and we're going to incorporate this and that element into our new synodal approach in the Church. Early on, I had written an article in which I said that the delegates at the Synod have become spectators, because the real power of what's going on is in the hands of the expert committees, and the people who chose them naturally have great influence. And so who knows what's going to happen? But as you can understand, the women's ordination crowd never stops. There's no argument that's going to convince them that they're wrong. So they basically have to be told, you need to obey even if you don't agree, because that's what it means to be a Catholic, to accept the Catholic faith, not to try to introduce heretical changes simply because you want power in the life of the Church. The governing style of the Pope, of course, is to appear to be consultative and to maintain that at all costs, but then to do what he wants, often in a way that's unexpected. But then who knows what's going to happen the next day? Yeah, he told CBS News last spring no to women deacons. Well, if that's the case, then at the beginning of the synod, simply be announced, the question of women deacons is clear, it's been decided, it's no longer subject to discussion, it's removed from the agenda, the committees that have been formed are going to be dissolved. They didn't do that. It keeps going on and on and on. So you just say to yourself, what's going on here? Hard to say that the Pope is leading the church in a way that everybody can understand.
Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.